Hello and welcome. My name is Sarah Seidelman. I should introduce myself first. And this is just another episode of the Hummingbird series. And today I bring to you Stacey Andon. Stacey, can you say hello?
Good morning.
And Stacey is another amazing life coach who I've just been following her on Instagram and Facebook. And I think she has this amazing, beautiful sort of loving energy that if you could use a dose of that, you should definitely follow her. And I just invited her on because I think she's just got this, a lot of wisdom to share. And we were talking before we hopped on about what we might talk about. And we were discussing we were discussing how many of us need permission to live the life that we want to live, but we're sort of waiting for somebody to give it to us, like our mother, our coworkers, our partner, our kids even maybe we believe that they're holding us back somehow. So we were going to kind of talk about that and just see where our conversation took us. But Stacey, maybe you can offer some wisdom for, a person out there who is thinking, I want to follow my feel good and do something totally radical and different, but I'm afraid people aren't going to like it.
Yeah, that's a really great question and one I get all the time. I think people get, particularly women, we've all followed this path of like linear definition of success. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And then it doesn't, number one, it doesn't usually quite work out that way. And, I find a lot of people, in addition to looking to our loved ones, but they're looking to some expert. The person, and I myself have been this person where it's like, I need to read a book. I need to find a course. Like I'm looking for somebody to validate that, yes, if I quit my job and I move across the country, like that is an okay thing to do. I was just talking to a woman who that is kind of her experience, and she's meeting up with her old friends, and she was concerned, are they going to understand my choice around this? And you're right, it's a really hard question sometimes, especially when we're forward facing, to be okay with, hey, I'm going down this meandering path because my heart is nudging me there. I find if you speak from that space and you can own it and you can talk to it that way, people resonate with that energy. They might not always understand what you're doing, but when you speak so passionately about that, to me, I don't know, that can be very contagious.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing I realized is I worried that so many people would judge me for leaving medicine or even taking a sabbatical, taking a break, or doing some of the travel I did away from my family. Like I worried other fellow mothers would say, like, what kind of mother would leave her kids for 21 days to go to India? That's selfish. That's, but yet I had to wrestle with the thought that I really want to go. So I can either let that worry that they're going to judge me, keep me from going, or I can simply go and hope that that it's okay. And what I found was very few people understood my desire to leave my family for 21 days. But many people were grateful that I shared my story about what happened to me there. So what was it? I was going to just say something about, I was at a retreat last night I was running, and somebody said, I have this dream of being financially free and traveling a lot. And my fear is that my peer group, who is very much into self-sacrifice and living on very little money and, changing the world through those means, she's worried that they're going to think she's a bad person, or if she does attain it, that they'll be jealous or they'll be angry or they'll judge her for that because that's not what they value.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I always say you gotta snuggle and get close and nestle into whatever that fear is. So many times we want to just talk ourselves out of that, or we want to just put it out of our mind. I'm like, let that come closer. What is that fear, right? And really kind of play around in that and see kind of, are we, because what I found is most of the time we are judging ourselves. At the heart of us worrying about other people is, are we okay with what we're choosing? Do we really love, like, can we stand in that? It reminds me, last year I saw Brene Brown speak as she was talking about her book that just came out, Braving the Wilderness, and she was quoting Maya Angelou, and she quotes her in that book about, I belong everywhere and I belong nowhere. And that sentiment, I think, life-changing. How do you really, really respond and own what your heart wants in this world, and then maneuver and meander in the social world as well? That's not for the faint of heart. It's a practice, for sure.
Yeah, I know when I look back at my own trajectory of like leaving medicine, I so feared that my coworkers were going to stop me or somehow judge me, or that my mother was going to not like it, or that my partner was just going to be disappointed. But ultimately, at the end of the day, in hindsight, the only thing that was stopping me was me. I was ultimately judging myself. And I think those fears of what other people are going to think, really, for me anyway, stem from concern that I'm not lovable, if I do this, that's, it means I'm selfish, or I'm confused, or I'm a jerk. Like, if I quit my job and, that there's something wrong with me and therefore I'm not lovable. And I think ultimately, isn't that why we're here? We all just want to be loved, accepted, seen, heard.
Yes. I'm all in on the self-love, because I think that when you are, like I always say, to thy own self be true, when you are really true to your heart and you cultivate this self-love, it does reverberate out to everybody else, right? This selfish thing about us taking, but I actually think the reverse is true. The more you really love and honor who you are and what you're doing on the planet. Everybody has a different flavor of magic. That's what I would say. And the world needs all the flavors. So your journey is different than my journey, but absolutely at the core, it's like, do we love ourselves? And the world, I feel like, so much wants to tell us we're not okay, right? They want to sell us lots of things to make us feel better. And I think that if we try to ground ourselves outside in that world, we're constantly going to be feeling off kilter. So to me, the journey is always within. How do you go in and find that wealth? It's there. It plays with all the signs and all the magic that's around. I have been in love with all of the animal work you've done forever, because I've felt so connected to the animal world in my own kind of journey, and listening to wisdom and getting the nudges. The animals are talking to me all the time. And I am always thinking like, oh my goodness, I'm the only one on the planet that's hearing these voices. And I don't think that's true, but that is a concern of mine.
Right. Am I so strange for listening to the beasties? And let's talk about that, because we were, just before we hopped on the phone, Stacey was saying, I was like, what piece of advice do you have for somebody who's like trying to honor, give themselves permission to go towards something that they're longing for? And you mentioned, following the signs that are all around. Can you talk about, like, how do you work with the animals or other symbols and signs that are showing up? Like, maybe give us some examples from your life.
Ooh. So, I could spend 3 hours, but I will keep it brief in the container that we're in. But, it was funny. I've always felt like there's signs, like I'll turn on the radio and there'll be a perfect song in that moment. And there's a lyric and it just kind of jumps out at me, and it's an answer to a question I've been pondering all morning. Or I go for a walk. It was funny. I will share this story. I went for a walk the other day, and cardinals are my animal outside. The bird, I love all the animals, but there's a special cardinal called Jack that's mine, and he dive bombs in front of me all the time when I'm out on the walk, just to make sure I know, I guess he's there, which I always do. And the other day I was out walking, and I've been kind of in this midlife melting of my own in terms of transformation and who am I on this planet, all those big questions. And there were like 5 or 6 robins all around me on this path. And I don't usually pay attention to the robins. They're usually, they're everywhere. They're flying around. And I heard this voice that said, "We are here right now for you." And I was like, okay, I'm listening. And I went back to your book. I came back from my walk. I pulled out your book. I looked up robin energy, and there was such this beautiful, it was about nesting and maternal and working together as a partnership, which was very applicable in my life too with my husband. So it just was like, every time I think we think we're the most alone in the world, if we just kind of, again, ask or look around, there's something there. A tree, a song, a book page in a book, a message from a friend. They're all conspiring on our behalf. They're there to support, and again, to remind us that love is everywhere. It's not just, people go, "I lost it." I don't believe love can be lost.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's one thing that BCs have taught me, that that we're kind of marinating in this big bowl of love soup. And it's like, if we can just open our eyes long enough, or just listen long enough to pay attention, things can come through. Can you talk about too a little bit, because I know a lot of people have questions about this. We were talking about core beasties, and Stacey told me who her beastie is. And I think sometimes people are like, how do you know who your core beastie is? And then how do you work with it? How do you honor it? How do you communicate with it and get insights? Maybe if you can just share a little bit about, who it is, and because Stacey's open about it.
Absolutely. Very open. Actually, I saw this like a month ago, and I had to buy it because that white tiger is my beastie. And it's interesting to me. So as a child, when we all get stuffed animals, or we gravitate, I lived in New York, so we went to the Bronx Zoo. Like, that was a big thing, going to the Bronx Zoo all the time. It's like, I want to see the tigers. If I was going to buy a stuffed animal, I didn't have that many, but I had a tiger. And I just gravitated, your wallpaper on your computer, when we first got to do that, I wanted a tiger. And I never really thought much about it as a child. And then as I got older and I got into coaching, and I just started to connect with this more. Either you asked the question somewhere, or it came up somewhere, and I remember thinking, like, immediately, tiger. It just was all that energy was always in my life somewhere, and it was what I had naturally gravitated. Like, it wasn't like I had to think hard about it, or really like spend a lot. It was like, manatee is another one that I absolutely love too, the manatees. So I feel like they're kind of a supporting role in my life as well, but I just kind of went immediately to that. And so how do I honor it every day? A lot of times when I'm meditating, I will kind of just call that part of me in, that connection in, and ask, what do you want to share with me today? Do you have any wisdom? If I am considering something that's weighing heavily on my heart, I will kind of step out of myself and say, what would the tiger, what would you want to offer me now in this moment? And those kinds of questions, really just calling her in. Particularly, there's like a tender fierceness to me. And so I always think of the fierceness as that tiger, and when's it needed, and when is the tender kind ofness needed as well too. So it's always just kind of playing and experimenting. That's my formula.
I love it. Yeah, I love that idea that you could be just sitting in a meditation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a shamanic journey, which, I mean, I love that methodology and I use it all the time and work in that way. But I think a meditation could be a wander in the woods. Sometimes I'll invite Alice the elephant to join me when I'm out in the woods walking, and I just invite her, and then I just begin to perceive, that she's stumbling along the trail with me. And sometimes I'll ask, like, what sometimes I just do it for fun, and other times just, you know, to have company, and sometimes to ask a question.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I think it can be so easy, like just asking yourself, who is the beastie that since childhood just lights me up? Like at the zoo, I was the first place I wanted to run, or I couldn't wait to get there. That may be your answer. And then for some of us like me, who is much more stuck in my intellectual mind, it was very hard for me to figure mine out. So I had to do a shamanic journey eventually.
Yeah. You know, even just to go, like, I don't know, like even to go through a book like yours or other things with animals and just feel, I use a lot of oracle decks as well too. So pull cards from those kinds of things. So Sarah, that's what you need to do next. I want an oracle deck. I'm just saying.
Yes, we're working on it. We'll see what happens.
There, I'm going to be the first one to purchase a whole mass quantities of them.
Thank you.
Because I think that's another way. For a long time, I thought that there was a fox that showed up in my life a couple of years ago, and I was going through a tricky situation, and it was I questioned myself: was it the fox? Is it and I realized in that moment, well, number one, does it really, like, we don't need to get the mind all worked up about these things, and looking back on it, there was that particular situation. The fox was like right in my biz for like a good 6 weeks. The fox would show up on the trail, see me sit and wait for me to approach it, so much so that my husband was nervous that I was getting too close. I said, I don't think that the fox is going to hurt me. But that's how beasties, they literally like almost want to get in my face to get my attention. So I would say just start noticing if you're getting a greeting card with animals, just start opening yourself to that or asking the question and see what shows. And again, to your point, have fun with it. It doesn't have to be so serious.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Stacey, this has just been a delight talking with you. And for people who are interested in maybe getting some of your loving, beautiful, wise coaching, where can they find you? And I know you have like a meditation that you offer, and you may have other things, but can you tell us about where to find you?
Absolutely. So if you want to play with me on social media, which I love to play, I do daily love tip videos on my Facebook page, which is Stacey Andon Coaching. I also just created an Instagram channel, so I'm playing out there as well too. I love Instagram. It's such a visual connection to all these things that we've been talking about. And if you want more information, if you wanted some information about coaching, on my website, which is staceyandon.com, and I have a free love meditation right on the homepage, a way for you really to connect, not with what the world thinks you should love, but really what you love, and really kind of tapping into that soul language, which is kind of our own love language that we each have encoded in us.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I want to do it now.
And thank you, Sarah, for inviting me on. What a pleasure. It was like, I couldn't wait. I almost couldn't sleep last night. I was so excited to talk together. So thank you.
And thank you for sharing kind of your beastly wisdom too, and how to work with that, because I think that's going to speak to a lot of people.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the work you're doing in the world. It just opens so many paths for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Bye, everybody. See you next time on the next Hummingbird series.